Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained while we talk about the Montreal Canadiens. It is an exciting time of the summer, and boy, do we have a fantastic show today with two exclusive interviews. You are not going to want to miss them. We'll tell you who that's going to be in just a moment. But first, allow me to do some introductions. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm going to be your host on today's show for episode 353 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, entitled Habs Draft Countdown. Top Scouts Reveal Picks. I'm, of course, pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host. He's our founder and president here at Rocket Sports. His name is Rick Stevens. And I guess, Rick, before we talk about the show, I must say, happy summer.
It is officially summer. Happy summer to you. And good weather forecast for Montreal in the 30s this week. So indeed, it is summer. There was good weather last week, too, for the F1. Congratulations to the folks that put on the Montreal Grand Prix, the Canadian Grand Prix. It all went off this year almost flawlessly, although Fred Vasseur, the team principal from Ferrari, said that Lewis Hamilton's problems were caused when Lewis kissed a marmot at 200 miles an hour, unfortunately for Lewis.
Unfortunately for the marmot.
Well, that too.
Poor little groundhog.
Congratulations to George Russell. Good day for the Mercedes team.
Yeah.
But a really good day for the fans of F1. And there were plenty of Montreal Canadiens players on the scene. And we saw pictures of them on the track in the pit area and around downtown. And
bad day for Lando Norris.
Yeah. Patrick Laine was there with Valtteri Bottas.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a great weekend.
It was great weekend, and now, and that was coming on the heels of what we had a great show last week. We had two draft and scout experts, prospect experts on the show last week. Michael Algello and Jerome Berube from. He's from hockey, the director of scouting from Hockey Prospect. In fact, all of you seemed to really enjoy last week's show. Great numbers for the podcast last week. Great numbers on YouTube for the podcast last week. The YouTube viewers really liked it. And so if you liked last week, you're going to love this week because we have some news and so forth to get to. But we once again have two interviews as we really enter the final stages of the countdown leading up to the NHL Draft next weekend. We really want to get all of the analysis and perspective and opinions from the top guys out there, and we've done that today. We've got Russ Cohen coming up on the show. You'll know him from Off the Post Radio, Sirius XM NHL Radio. He's a NCAA scout for Elite Prospects. He's going to be here on the show talking about the Habs first round draft choices. And then in our second segment, none other, back once again this year. He's a regular returning guest right around this time every year on the show. Sportsnet's own draft expert and prospect scout, Sam Cosentino, will be here on the show. And he's got some great information and opinions to share with Habs fans that you are not going to want to miss.
We call the show Canadiens Connection, and it's our connections with the hockey industry. And we've been doing this a long time with Rocket Sports, 15 years or so. And so we've built up some really good relationships, and that's why you come here. There's lots of folks who, put out fan opinions and kind of they copy from one place to another, their rankings, their opinions, but we can't watch every game, but we get the experts that do watch prospects around the world, and we bring them here for you so you can get expert opinion and analysis and insight. And here we're going to have Russ and Sam today to give you some insight into what the Canadiens might be thinking and how they might be evaluating some of the picks. You heard Jerome Berube last week, and as you said, the podcast blew up last week on all platforms. Jerome Berube say that this kind of scouting that the folks at Hockey Prospect do it's like what NHL scouts do, and that's why all of these folks are experts at what they do, and they get close. They get very close to what the draft boards turn out to be.
They absolutely do. So we have a jam-packed show. Really great information. We don't want to wait another moment. So the only other thing I'll say to you before we get things kicked off here is don't forget that we want to hear from you. Later in the show, we're going to read some great responses to our fan question, our Canadiens Connection question of the week from last week. But in order for you to get in on this week's question of the week, we'll want to hear from you, whether it's feedback about something one of our guests have to say. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you just want to answer the question of the week, text us at 585-3-ROCKET. Again, that's 585-3-ROCKET. You can also drop us a comment on our YouTube channel. You can find that at InsideTheCanadiens.com, or drop us a reply or a DM on social media at Habs Connection, or on any of our articles over at Hockey Hot Stove, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But let's get things rocking and rolling. First, we're going to start with some roster news, believe it or not. The Canadiens made a signing this past week, in case you missed it. Young forward Vincent Rohrer, who had an outstanding performance at the Men's World Hockey Championships over the summer for Austria, got signed to his 3-year entry-level contract this past week. So that will take him through the 2027-28 season.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about him a fair bit on the podcast over the years. We even had an exclusive interview. If you go to CanadiensConnection.fm and type in his name, you'll see that. You'll listen to that exclusive interview. But as you said, for Austria at the World Championships, he had 6 points in 8 games, and he'll be back to Switzerland playing for the Lions next season. That's expected.
Absolutely. So congratulations to him. That's an exciting step forward in his development. This past week, the national teams from around the IIHF started to announce their opening 6 roster selections for next winter's Olympic Games in Milano Cortina. And of all of the national teams, one of them included a Montreal Canadiens roster player on their opening 6 roster, and that was the Slovak Ice Hockey Federation announcing that Juraj Slafkovský will represent Slovakia.
Nice. He's going to Italy to participate in the Olympics. That'll be his second Olympic Games. It was on the Olympic stage that the Canadiens took notice of his play. That was Beijing in 2022, where he was voted the most valuable player at that tournament. So we remember that Slafkovský politely declined to go to the World Championships, saying that he needed this past spring, saying that he needed to focus on getting ready for the fall and being healthy and strong and all that. A little bit of a dust up there. Whatever feud was there has been patched up, and he will be going to the Olympics. You said no other Canadians announced, and that's about right. If you look at the U.S. team, they have Eichel, the Tkachuk brothers, Austin Matthews, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy. For Canada, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Braden Point, Sam Reinhart, and Cale Makar. So still opportunities, players like Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and perhaps others to be named to their respective teams, but that will come out much later.
Absolutely. All right. Without further ado, let's dive into this week's Habs Prospect Report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world.
We're going to dive right into our first interview this week, right here in the Habs Prospect Report. Now, if you've been a frequent listener to the show over the years, you'll remember Russ Cohen's frequent appearances here on Canadiens Connection. You may also be familiar with him if you are active on social media, or if you are a frequent visitor to Elite Prospects or listen to SiriusXM NHL Radio. Russ Cohen, highly respected sports author, hockey analyst, prospect evaluator, scouts NCAA hockey for Elite Prospects, also appears on the Off the Post radio podcast and does the Locked On Flyers podcast as well, and appears on SiriusXM NHL Radio. And Russ recently released, is it his final top 32 ranking for the...
Yep, version 5, and that's his final top 32 draft ranking, not a mock, but a ranking. And you'll go to NHLDraftBuzz.com. Also, I think he has it on Sportsology.com, but NHLDraftBuzz.com. And yeah, just a spoiler that, again, we like the respected draft experts who kind of don't necessarily follow the crowd and are usually right. He's unlike many of the rankings. He has Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman from Erie, at number 2. James Hagan is his top prospect. Interesting. Again, not a mock. That's just his draft analysis, and Russ really focuses and specializes in prospects from the NCAA. He knows a lot about them. It's met all of them, and has followed them throughout the season.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it. Russ joined us recently to talk about the Canadiens' best options with the 16th and 17th overall pick in next week's draft. Let's hear what he has to say. Super excited to have our next guest back on the show. We always have a great conversation when Russ Cohen is in the building. You might know him at Sportsology on Twitter. He is also the co-host of Off the Post Radio. He's an author. You hear him on SiriusXM NHL. He's a prospect writer. He wears many hats in the hockey world, but we're very happy when he puts on the guest hat and visits us here at Canadiens Connection. Russ, thank you so much for being here. We are excited to have you back on the show.
Thanks, guys. How you doing?
We're doing great. You're fresh back from the Stanley Cup final in Florida. We saw you there on the ice. So before we get to draft stuff, let me ask you, you were there, you were on site, you were close to the action, and this is kind of being painted as the love-hate series. After Game 6, all you heard was Paul Maurice talking about all the love in the room, and the reason for the win was how much these guys love each other. And then the response by Wayne Gretzky on TNT afterwards said, I've been on a lot of teams that loved each other and missed the playoffs. So, and then on the other hand, just before Game 6, you had James Duthie tweeting that this is the nastiest trash talking Stanley Cup final ever. His quote from someone close to the scene said, quote, pure verbal hate. So how did you see this whole series that left, once again, Canada sitting on the sidelines without a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I don't think the hate was more dialed up than usual. I think because Florida plays that rougher game and Edmonton has a dirty side, I just think people focused on that more. Like, there's always a lot of trash talking for the Stanley Cup. Now, maybe you have a few extra trash talkers on Florida now with Brad Marchand, so that's fine, and Evander Kane is never short of that. So, maybe there was a little more than usual, but I didn't feel like it was any more dialed up. The love, I didn't feel like is any more dialed up. Like, every team loves each other until they don't win, and even teams that do win, Mike Keenan loved the Rangers until he faxed in his resignation, right? So, like, whatever. I mean, I don't get too caught up in that. All players play for each other. That's what they do.
So what sense did you get when you were on the ice talking to these guys afterwards, as far as the reason they were able to repeat as Stanley Cup champions?
Yeah, they have a different kind of mentality. I spoke to Itzer Lusterin, and one of the things I asked him, I said, was this harder this year because, you got to overcome more injuries? And he said, no, it was easier this year because we played a harder schedule. It was better to play the harder teams. And I was like, I wasn't really thinking that way, but they were. So they felt that way. It was unanimous that they could finally admit they did not want to go back to Edmonton. And neither did most of the media. I only found one or two that really wanted to. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
And they were worn down, though. I was only there for that game. So they were worn down. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't. So I feel like Florida, I had tweeted that I felt like they were going to empty the tank before the game because I knew Matthew Tkachuk was very hurt and didn't know how much longer he could go in the series, and he wasn't even skating up ice. Like, he was basically just playing zones. He was playing defensive zone. I'm out there for defense. Then I'll go in the offensive zone, and if I got to really start skating, I'm getting off the ice.
And avoiding any physicality.
So, but he scored a goal, right?
Yeah.
But, so you knew that there were some, key points like that, and I think Chris Knobloch got out-coached. I think he shouldn't have changed anything after their win. I don't think he should have played Stuart Skinner in that game. No. I said it on Sirius XM that morning. I said I would have gone with Cal Pickard, and they were like, why? And I'm like, well, because you already pulled Skinner, and it's like, I get that you lost that game with Pickard, but that was only his first loss, by the way, right?
In the playoffs, yeah.
In the playoffs, yeah. And so I was like, you already knew the other guy was problematic for you. And this is what I said, and it really came true. Sometimes, you give analysis, it can go completely against you. But I said, if he goes down 2 goals in the first period, Skinner, he's done. Like, that's it. It's over. The series is over. And he did. And it was over. That third goal was awful. Yeah. And so, but that's predictable. And then I don't know why Knobloch pulled a goalie with 7 minutes to go or whatever it was. It was ridiculous. They did eventually score a goal when it didn't matter anymore, but maybe they'd have scored that goal simply because Bob was eventually going to give one up, and maybe there'd be 3 minutes to go, and then you could pull the goalie.
Right.
It's like they just did it too early, and it completely backfired, like it usually does. Yeah. But this one really quick. So, before the series began, I did pick Edmonton. I thought they may have had something. I don't think it was Florida necessarily wearing them down. I do think the goaltending was bad. I think the substitutions were good at the beginning and bad after that. And then I feel like, while I liked that they picked up, Jake Wallman, I didn't like that they had picked up Skinner and Arvidsson. They're kind of like not playoff guys. So I feel like they still didn't have enough depth. They had it on defense finally. Their defense was better, but their goaltending is always going to betray them.
Well, as we said before we started recording the segment, busy week for you because now you come home from that, and we are just about a week away from the draft. So let's just talk for a moment. I think first the insight that we're looking for from you first is just the overall view of this year's draft class. How would you categorize this year's draft class, your overall impression of the class in general?
Yeah, weaker than last year, weaker than many other years. Still doesn't mean there's not good players. Of course, there's good players. The depth, I think, goes to about, I would say, to about 35, 38, right in that range. And then you're doing a lot of guessing. There's going to be guys that even towards the end of the first round, you're talking about third pairing defensemen, you're talking about third line guys. There's not many guys that could be a top pairing defenseman in this draft, at least to start. There's not many players here that are number one centers. So they're lacking those things. There's still a lot of defensemen in this draft, and there's a lot of size. This is one of the bigger drafts, but size doesn't always get you a good player. You might be able to hang around the league if you're big like Michael McCarron, but how good's Michael McCarron? You know what I mean? I think you could argue that. He certainly wasn't first round good, right?
No.
Like I knew that when they drafted him. So I think it's back to that. I think the bigger you are, the better you are. Only like, from my count, a quick count was like 10 to 12 guys were under 6 foot that were invited to the combine.
So yeah, bringing up Mark Bergevin's mistakes, and Mike McCarron was drafted simply because of size and because of what had happened, at the end of the year, that previous year.
Yeah.
But as you said, you need more than that, and
You do.
it was Jeff Gordon at the end of season availability, media availability, that said, yes, size, but also you need skill, you need compete level. Looking at, and let's remind folks that there's a couple of places for them to find you. NHLDraftBuzz.com is where you can find Russ's, I think it's version 5 of your top 32.
That's my last one, and the draft profiles are there. When I cover the events, I'll still put that on Sportsology for drafting, but otherwise all of it goes there.
So go to NHLDraftBuzz.com. Also, you can go to Elite Prospects, where you collaborate with other scouts, and there's ranked prospects there. Now, your top 32, not a mock; it's a simple ranking.
Rankings.
But if you were to, and let's not try to figure out what might happen if the Canadiens move up.
I'm not doing any of that.
Yeah, no. If they keep their pick, mid-teens, 16, 17, give us 3 players. Give us a couple players that you think might be in their scope.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I want to say is, if they went and got 18, I think they would do better than what the Bruins did back in the day when they had the 3 in a row.
Right.
I feel confident about that. So Montreal fans should at least feel good about that. I'll tell you one guy who really played it up for the Flyers and Flyers media was Justin Carbonneau, but there's no way Danny Briere is taking him 6th, but I think he was just trying, trying to get the Flyers interested. But I think the Canadiens should be interested. Either one, 16 or 17. He's a really good power forward type. He is fast. He can really make plays out of nothing. The problem is when you play in the Q, which is a league that, is not as strong as it used to be, defensively especially, that, on certain teams, guys are going to try and do too much, and he does. And so he'll basically skate into traffic or hold on to the puck a little too long, like Alexei Kovalev used to do, that kind of stuff. But all the talent's there, and the speed and all of that. Now, when I asked him about going into trouble at the combine, he just kind of gave me this answer like, yeah, I'm young. I'm not the player I'm going to be, and I'm working on everything. And it's like, okay, but I'm still going to worry about your hockey sense a little bit. Now, can they work that out of him? Maybe, because he's got good size. He's 6'1". He's probably like 195. He will lay a few hits. He's an excellent passer, excellent shooter. So it's mostly offensive with him. But again, I think he could tone it down. And if you're getting a guy 16, 17 there's a lot of upside here. So I feel like with one of those, if you get him, because you have the other one, you can take a little bit of a chance.
Right.
And at least this is maybe a chance for them to get a upper percentile skill and scorer in this draft where they are, which is not a great spot.
And for him, it's as you said, the criticism is his consistency, one, but his play away from the puck too, and that consistent compete level.
Yeah, I mean, play away from the puck definitely has to get better. He's not going to be the best defensive guy no matter what. Like, it's just not going to be. But if he provides the kind of offense that he might be able to, that is something that I feel like the Canadiens need, because while they have been making moves and most have worked out, like, look, the day that they got Kirby Doc, I said it was a bad move.
Yeah.
I said they gave up too much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like them. And they just felt like, well, we're going to make him a 2C. And they did that before. And everybody that they try and, Christian Dvorak, I said he's not a 2C, he's a 3C. Well, but we're going to make him a 2C. Well, but he wasn't. Everybody they've ever tried to turn into a 2C that isn't, they shouldn't try and turn him into a 2C.
Newhook, the same thing.
Newhook, yeah, and overpaid.
Newhook's the same thing too. So they've been doing this. And so they have to be careful not to do this. The other thing about Carbonneau is he does play 23% on defensive zone starts. That's not terrible. That actually for that league is pretty good. And he's 1.18 hits a game according to Instat. So yeah, there's a physicality level there too. So and a compete that I think competes fine.
Okay.
I don't have any trouble with it.
So you said if the luxury for the Canadiens, if they take Justin Carbonneau with all that skill and talent, that they can maybe swing for the fences with the other pick if it's back to back. So
I don't think they should swing for the fences for either, because I feel like this might be the last year they get this high in the first round, because they're close, depending on where Jacob Fowler's at, and maybe he needs another year. So, I don't think they're going to be in the McKenna sweepstakes. So, based on that, I wouldn't swing too high.
Okay. So anyone else that you see that's an interesting kind of player that might fit the mold that they're looking for?
Yeah, if they don't go for Carbonneau, Lyndon Lakovic's another guy who I like. He's a winger. He's a big, lanky one right now, but I think he can get to about 210, 220, 6'4". He's got good size. I really like what he brings to the table. He's got a good shot. He is a guy that knows what he is, and he really he can get to the net. I don't think he's a big time get to the net guy, but I think again when you look at his numbers, he had 62 points in 48 games for Moose Jaw. Those are good numbers. He's been good internationally. He's 30% on faceoffs, even as a winger, which is pretty good. So he's a guy that once in a while can take a draw. 42% on puck battles according to Instat. That's pretty good. He's definitely got to get stronger. I mean, he's only 190 right now. So if he gets to 225, we could be talking about a completely different guy. He's really good on the power play, great wrist shot, really good feel for the game. And so 28% defensive zone starts, which is pretty good. Does hit a little bit. So I feel like if you don't go for Carbonneau, then go for Lakovic, because they're both going to take a while. Carbonneau might get there quicker because of the offense if you ignore the other stuff, which the Canadiens have done sometimes over the years. Ignore the other stuff if the offense is that good. And so I feel like those are two options for that. And then, if you feel you need a center, they're in a spot where if you take a chance on Roger McQueen at that point, I don't kill you. I don't kill the team. I would never take him in the top 10. He would have been top 5 if he didn't have, the fracture in his back. And, he did do pull-ups. He did work out. That's great. But this can flare up, and he's a bigger guy. And it's one of those things, all you have to do is talk to any skeletal guy, doctor, and they'll tell you, yeah, it can reoccur. And so he's terrific talent. He's definitely going to miss games over the years, though. But he is a center, and he's a big center. So, if you could manage him sports management-wise and sports medicine-wise, rather, sorry. You might be able to get the most out of him. He is another guy that can play a heavy game, and that's good and bad with that injury. But, right now he's declaring himself fine, and I do think he is, but hockey's a tough game. But he's got a great shot, and he is a guy that could possibly be a second-line center, but you are just taking this risk that, hey, he's going to miss a certain amount of time because of that back.
Now, you said you were at, or we said you were at the Stanley Cup final. Prior to that, you were at the Combine. You're everywhere, Russ.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Lakovic, and it sounds like the Canadiens pushed him a little, challenged him a little during the interview, because he said that the Canadiens were very critical of him, challenging him at the beginning of the interview. But as it went along, he said that they showed respect for his game and that he thought the interview went very well. Who did you enjoy talking to at the Combine and the interview that kind of stuck out for you the most?
Frundell is great, but I can't talk about him on the show because the Canadians have no shot at him. So
No.
You know.
Well, so we get to know him. Why did you think he was so good in his interview?
I think one thing is we hadn't gotten a chance to really hear from him a lot. I don't know why over the year, and he's a guy that really excelled in everything that went on at the Combine. So with all the physicality and just being an athlete, I have a video on my Insta showing him with his vertical leap, which is tremendous, and that thing blew up because people just have a lot of interest in him. And so I feel like he was one of the more engaging. I did like Cole Reshney a lot. Cole Reshney will certainly, it's a little early for him maybe, for the Canadians, but I like him. Yeah, I think his mental makeup is really good. I think he's fearless. I think when I asked him, challenged him, I do challenge guys too a little bit like teams. I'm not that easy media interview that guys are hoping to get. And he thinks I asked him about scoring in the middle of the ice, and he thinks he could still do it. Moving up, he knows he's going to get stronger. He knows he'll get faster, and I don't doubt it. I like him, and I like his offense a lot. I think he has a great shot. So, I thought he was engaging that way. Will Horcoff was really engaging. He's a big guy. I just don't know where the offense is going to be for him. So he would be, for me, more of a second rounder, but he'll be gone probably by the second round because his dad played Sean, and he's 6'4", and so somebody's going to take him because of the size factor. So there is that. I like Cole McKinney a lot. It's a little early for him, but he won't be there in the second round, so that would be a decision the Canadians would have to make. He's a center, third or fourth line center, but really, really good. I mean, I showed pictures of him probably on my Insta, but it's also on Locked On Flyers, the other show I do with Rachel, and just the difference from January to now, what he looks like. And he's a PK specialist, but he was one of the better scorers on the NTDP. You can say what you want about the NTDP, but they still have some really good players in this draft. It's just, were they as dynamic as they used to be? No. I could give you another name, Peyton Kettles he's a defenseman. He did talk to Montreal. I think he's 6'3". He's a defense. Let's see.
And he's a guy down.
Yeah, he was a guy that wasn't particularly on my radar, so I can't give you all of his attributes. I haven't really vetted him out yet. Elite prospects, we had him in the second round. He's definitely a guy you would look at. He played for Swift Current. Looks like, according to the elite prospects guys, a shutdown defenseman. And so 6'5". He's 6'5", 194 right now. I thought he was a really good interview. He told me he spoke to Montreal. And so that's the kind of guy with one of those seconds I think is really good. I mean, maybe at some point I'll write about him because I do have audio of him. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I like him. He's from Winnipeg. So
that's always good.
Canadian. Yep. He'll be okay with the cold, and he'll love us. He would love a city like Montreal. So I do think there's a reason the Canadians did speak to him. I mean, there's so many Canadians reporters there that everybody asks them about Montreal, but I didn't, on my Combine report on Sportsology, I really didn't list Montreal as much, mostly the Flyers, but that one kind of stuck out. And then, another guy would be a little early, Cullen Potter, Jenny Potter's kid, if you remember her as a player.
Yeah.
Really good, really fast. He left the NTDP. He went to college at Arizona State. That team's going to get a lot better this year. He may be the fastest guy in the draft. If he's not, he's the best skater. Good scorer. Little undersized, but not bad. You don't notice. The hockey IQ is super high. So, if they took him with one of the picks, he's going to make the NHL. It's just in what capacity? Probably third line. That would be my guess. I don't think he's a fourth liner. He doesn't have the muscle for that, but he's got everything else. Like, this kid is super schooled at hockey and had a really good freshman year. So he's another guy I think they might have interest in.
In speaking with the amount of prospects that you did at the Combine and even throughout the year and so forth, talking about college hockey there for a moment, what's the sense that you got in talking to prospects about, the number of CHL players who are seriously interested in now making that jump to the NCAA now that that's a path that's available?
Yeah, it's more than interest. Well, you saw Jackson Smith finally went, and so he went. The rest are going to wait until after the draft, and then I think they're going to start to flood in. When I spoke to Brady Peddle, who's going to Michigan State, and I asked him about it, he's a really good shutdown defenseman, by the way, so that he could be a name Canadiens fans might want to look at in the second round. He said there's a lot of skill coming in, and he smiled at me. And so, that means Gavin McKenna definitely has interest, like we all thought, in Michigan State, and also Penn State. Michael Misa certainly wants to sign, so if, let's say he goes to San Jose might sign him, but if they don't, he'll probably go to Penn State and play with his brother, Luke. And so that one, we'll wait and see. We know that Michael wants to sign first, but if he can't get signed, I don't think he's going back. I think he's going to go to Penn State. We have various other players that are reports. The biggest thing, there were two things. I spoke to a guy who, Thomas Michael, who's going to be maybe a seventh rounder, a big 6'4" defenseman with a right-handed shot. I spoke to him, and he's coming over to college, and I asked him why, because he's not a guy coming out of the CHL. He came out of originally the Czech Elite League and then USHL. So, and his reason was, he wanted to get over here and start playing North American hockey. And then I said, what about your parents having influence? He said, yes, that's a factor too. And so, and I know that is a factor because I spoke to a top prospect's parents, and they want their kids to go to school and play hockey. Mm-hmm. So now they can go to school, play hockey, and possibly get paid if they go to one of these top schools. So the Big Ten is going to be loaded. I spoke to Logan Hensler, who, if he were there at 16, I would jump at right-handed shot defenseman for the NTDP. I think he has more offense that showed. He would be a guy that I think Montreal would jump at, but I don't know if he'll be there. But if he is, he's certainly somebody that they could look at. Anyhow, he plays for Wisconsin, and he knows how good that his conference is now going to be. And so these guys all know stuff's happening, and it's going to happen, but they're waiting until after the draft, most of them. So there'll probably be 2 or 3 other good names, and there'll probably be a host of others that will make that decision too, depending on what the NIL money is for them, because that's a factor now.
We mentioned a good Winnipeg guy. How about a good Winnipeg guy in Jonathan Toews, who we're recording this on Friday, and just an hour or so ago, Jonathan Toews and the Winnipeg Jets agreed to a 1-year contract. Everybody likes a comeback. Jonathan Toews, this is a real get for the Winnipeg Jets, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no question, especially because Lowry, I think, just had knee surgery, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a big deal. I think we all knew it was going to happen. I mean, if you didn't think he was going there first, I mean, I interviewed him right after the draft for a Winnipeg magazine, and I got his love for Winnipeg. So I knew someday he'd play for them. And so, yeah, the long COVID and all that definitely derailed him a bit. But, yeah, I think he'll give them 50 points. I don't think he should be a 2C. This is the same situation that we get into with a lot of teams. They may force him into 2C for a while, but I think he's probably more suited to come back at 3C. But we'll see what they do in free agency. But it's a big deal. It's going to be hard, though. You're away from the game for a couple of years. It's not easy. He was never the best skater either, so now, I'm going to worry about his skating a little bit, but I don't worry about the rest. I think he'll still be great at faceoffs. I mean, I covered when I first started an aging Mark Messier and saw what he could still do and couldn't do, and I think it'll be similar for for a guy like Taves, but Messier was never away from the game for that long. So, there may be a ramping up period. Like, wouldn't shock me.
So now we're going to make you do something that's probably a little uncomfortable, and that's talk about yourself. Since the last time that we had you on the show talking about the draft, you have another book out. I think it's number 11. And this one, fascinating, called Game Winners, the Greatest Game-Winning Goals in Hockey History. And if it's the greatest game-winning goals in hockey history, there's got to be one or two Montreal Canadiens on your list somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the Canadiens would be impossible to keep out, but also Canadiens fans would always say that, well, they should have like 5 entries in here, and just, so that wasn't the case. But one of them is the 4-peat, and that one hurt back in the day. Because I grew up a Ranger fan, and so But I kind of knew. I mean, that did not surprise me that it happened, and those guys were. Some of them were on that last roundup, and so you knew that they were going to be hard to take out. So they are in there for that, and it is something that, growing up, that was not fun for me.
Well, so where can, if folks are interested in this latest book release of yours, where is the best place for them to go to purchase it?
They could get it at Amazon.com. That is the absolute best place. Or if somebody wants to, message me to get it autographed, we have some autographed copies for myself and Matt Blittner, who did the book with me. So that's fine too. So either way, it would work out great.
And for folks in Winnipeg, forward by Pete Stemkowski, another great NHL name and another great Winnipegger.
Yeah, no doubt. Scored a famous goal with the Rangers. You could read about that. He is just a good guy. He still does some radio work with the Rangers. But yeah, he's fun. He's got a 67 Leafs ring. He's one of the few.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys have passed, unfortunately. And Leafs fans are kind of like waiting for that next one. And, Pete's got it. Like he does. And I once texted my friend Michael Jello, who a picture when Pete came through town in Philly, and I took a picture of the 67 ring, and I texted it to him. I said, "Here you go. There's your ring." And Pete had fun with it. He wears it, proudly. And I get it. Like, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully it will not be a long time before we have you back on the show, Russ.
Yeah.
We always appreciate you coming, and this was great today. Thank you for making time in what we know is a busy time of year for you to come back and join us on the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I just love talking to Russ about hockey.
Yep, absolutely.
Especially prospects, but he's so knowledgeable about hockey. Author of 11 books. He's followed the game for a very long time, but as I said, really, really knows prospects well. And we're happy to have him on the show every single year.
Absolutely. And so go check out his most recent book, too, that Game Winners book. He always does a great job with what he's written. Rounding out the Habs prospect report, former Canadian Gabriel Dumont. You remember that name? Well, he has announced his retirement from hockey this week. In case you have not kept track of Gabriel Dumont over the years, the 34-year-old has been with Syracuse, actually, for a number of seasons, Rick, and seemed to really find a good home there.
Yeah, announcing his retirement as a player at the ripe old age of 34. We remember Gab Dumont from first the Hamilton Bulldogs, then St. John's Ice Caps. Managed to get into a few games, I think 19 in all for the Montreal Canadiens. He was just a good guy, gritty on the smaller side, but played a gritty game. Yeah. Very competitive, and went to the Tampa Bay Lightning organization and just really found a home in Syracuse. And I remember being in the halls in Syracuse, and of course, Gab was the captain for the Crunch. And all of his former teammates after the game would come and come down to talk to him, and Gab would have his kids crawling all over him. And, he really found a home. He's been the captain of the Syracuse Crunch for the last 4 years. Still productive, fallen off a bit this past season, but a good guy. A good AHL player, and we wish him well in retirement.
Absolutely. Congratulations, and hope he has some fun prospects ahead. The drama for the Stanley Cup final has finally concluded, and Florida winning it for the second consecutive year, lifting the cup. Very exciting for them, and quite the. Whew. It always feels like, I think all of us feel tired by the time the cup finally gets awarded. I can't imagine the players, but it was certainly a final to remember.
It was intense. Some say as intense as they've ever seen, but in the end, the Panthers made it look easy, maybe a little even easier than last year. Against the same opponents, the Oilers. The Oilers left quietly, I think, in this series. And congratulations to the Panthers. Earned it. Happy for Paul Maurice. Happy for Sylvain Lefebvre. Happy for some of the players. Sam Bennett named Conn Smythe trophy winner. Could have been Bennett. Could have been, dare I say, Brad Marchand, who... again, hard to say, but he's kind of growing on me since he left the Bruins. Yeah. They played hard and they partied hard and they damaged the cup
again.
But it'll be they'll have a fun summer. And with that, with the end of the Stanley Cup, of course, all eyes turn to the draft, and with that coming up next week, that's where our attention is. But should also mention that the NHL buyout window has opened. And of course, they have to go on unconditional waivers. Teams have to put players on unconditional waivers first, and then take advantage of buyout period. The only one I've seen so far is the Blackhawks putting TJ Brody on unconditional waivers for the purposes of buying him out. Don't think that the Montreal Canadiens are going to be involved in that those actions.
No. While we're talking about the draft, we're gearing up for the draft. The Athletic, Corey Pronman has his mock out for all 225 picks in the 2025 NHL Draft, which will take place in less than a week, Friday night. And who does Corey feel in his final mock that the Canadiens are going to go with at 16 and 17?
Now, mocking all 225 picks,
that's a bit much.
Is ridiculous, and Corey says as much. I'd
love to know his
intro.
final correct percentage out of that.
It's going to be low, and nothing against it. It's just going to be low.
It's just impossibly hard to figure out.
If he is right on the Canadiens' picks at 16 and 17. It would be a cause for huge celebration. He's got Carter Bear from Everett going number 16 to the Canadiens, and then Lyndon Lakovic from Moose Jaw at number 17. If Carter Bear is still available at 16, the Canadiens are going to take him.
You have to take him.
And you heard Jerome Berube talk about if there's a pick in this draft, other than, say, Brady Martin, who is ideal for the Montreal Canadiens, it's got to be Carter Bear. The concern is, of course, that he's going to be gone by that point in the draft. But we got to wish Corey well on this one, because this would be fabulous if it turns out to be correct.
It definitely would. It is also the season for trades to begin happening. And in fact, today, just before we're recording the show on Saturday, we see Seattle Kraken involved in a trade for Joe Veleno. Who did they send back?
Andre Burakovsky.
Yeah. But before that, the Kraken had a little bit more impactful trade with the Dallas Stars. with the Stars sending Mason Marchment to the Seattle Kraken in exchange for a 3rd and 4th round draft pick.
Leafs disappointed not to get Marchment. Dallas looking to free up some cap space, and the Seattle Kraken have promised to be very active, and so they have. Few other trades. We remember the Chris Kreider trades. There's Eric Holla going to Nashville as well, and Nick Bonino. Nick Bonino joined the Penguins in other news, coaching staff as an assistant coach. Remember, the Canadiens actually had Nick Bonino in a 3-way trade that Kent Hughes had arranged with San Jose and Pittsburgh. And it was just a salary, making use of the salary cap. And he never actually played for the Canadiens, but they owned half of his salary for a period of time. There's a Canadiens connection right there.
There you go. Let's have another Canadiens connection. We talked about former Montreal Canadien Gabriel Dumont a moment ago. Well, what about, here's another blast from the past. What about former Montreal Canadien Sven Andrighetto? Remember that name? Well, on Thursday, the IIHF announced that Sven Andrighetto, who is a Swiss forward, has been named the 2024-25 IIHF Male Player of the Year.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
It's wonderful. This is an award. Before I let you get to the ins and outs of reminding people about Sven Andrighetto, the award is given every year to a player who has best demonstrated exceptional skill, determination, team success, and sporting character on and off the ice during the most recent season. This is a relatively new award for the IIHF. It actually was first awarded in 2023, so this is only the 3rd year that they've done it. Sven Andrighetto gets it this year. Who got it the first year in 2023? Connor Bedard.
All right.
Pretty good company.
Yeah, for sure. Sven Andrighetto, drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, 3rd round in 2013. And he actually played over 200 regular season games in the NHL for the Canadiens first, and then the Colorado Avalanche. He was a player who came over and played in the Q, very productive in the Q in his playing for the Huskies in his final junior season. He had a pace of 2 points per game in the Q in the regular season and the playoffs. Kind of player who I think he was more of a playmaker, but he could score. He was a two-way player. He was he would get into not a large player, 5'10", but wasn't afraid to mix it up and go to the dirty areas, high compete level, and then has been in Switzerland playing for the Lions for many years and productive there. I always remember, and Sven Andrighetto, he changed my way of thinking.
We covered Sven Andrighetto quite a bit when he was playing in the AHL.
Yeah. He played for the Bulldogs, played for the St. John's Ice Caps, and it was just, having to readjust from being purely a fan and thinking like a journalist, thinking like a player. And I remember one season that Sven Andrighetto was on the Montreal Canadiens roster. He played a few games, and then the Canadiens sent him down to the AHL affiliate, and he had to go through waivers. And there was quite, he was a good prospect for the Canadiens, and there was some worry amongst the Canadiens brass about losing him on waivers. And we were in Binghamton and walking underneath the arena. And,
down on ice level, just getting to the press room or something like that.
Yeah, and Sven walked in with us, and there he was, and he had made it through waivers. And, the organization was happy that they didn't lose him. I had a smile on my face, and when I saw him, I said, Sven, it's great to see you. You made it through. Well, it's so good that, you weren't grabbed by another team. And he looked at me like, you're an idiot. Like I was hoping to get a chance elsewhere, and I thought, oh, okay.
It means nobody wanted me. It means I'm stuck here.
Yeah, I don't get another chance in the NHL, and he went on to play for Colorado, but it's just like it made me think, I gotta change my way. Don't think like a fan.
Clearing waivers is not always a positive thing for a player.
Is not always positive for a player who are maybe looking for an opportunity with the new organization. And big lesson for me, and I appreciate Sven for teaching me that lesson.
And he was fine. There was no ill will.
Not at all.
Sven was always really great to talk to.
Absolutely.
He was always very, very polite, very kind. And I think even in one of his last games towards the end of the season, you might have even joked with him like, remember that time when I congratulated you? And he just kind of looked at you like, yes, I remember that. All right. Well, congratulations to Sven Andrighetto. Glad to see that he's still doing well and finding success. And what an honor for him. All right. We are going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. We're going to hear from our sponsors over at DraftKings with an incentive that you're definitely going to want to take advantage of. You might be a DraftKings Sportsbook user or DraftKings Daily Fantasy user, but DraftKings has a brand new app called Pick Six. It's a whole new way to play and bet on your favorite sports teams and players, and so they've got a great incentive if you're new to this new app of theirs called Pick Six. You're going to want to check that out and grab a beverage and sit back, because when we come back on the other side, Sportsnet's Sam Cosentino is joining us right here on the show to talk about what he believes the Montreal Canadiens could be looking to do at next week's draft in the first round. You're not going to want to miss it, so stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
The NBA Finals are finally here, and this is your last shot to win some real cash before the season ends. The simplest way to get in on the action? Downloading the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for two or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Nail your picks and you're heating up. Pick 6 brings upside with payouts up to 500 times. Ready to make your finals run? New DraftKings Pick 6 customers can toss in just $5 on your first entry, and you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code THPN. That's code THPN. New customers play $5, get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Ride the upside, only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio. Once again, my name is Amy Johnson. If you'd like to follow me on X, feel free to do so. My handle over there is @FlyersRule. And of course, with me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, my co-host, Rick Stevens. You definitely want to be sure to follow him on X @Rocket Sports. That's our main account for Rocket Sports Media and Rocket Sports Radio. So all of our content comes out there, whether it's video, whether it's podcast, whether it's written articles, plus all of the news that we share, news and reports and that type of thing about the Canadiens and their prospects. So be sure you're following @Rocket Sports on X. And don't forget to subscribe. If you liked last week's show, maybe you're new to the show this week because you hear that our next guest, Sam Cosentino, is going to be on the show. Well, stick around all summer because we're not going anywhere. We're here every single week, all year long, not just during hockey season. And we bring you really great coverage of the Canadiens and their prospects all year round. So be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, hit the share button to share on social media with your followers. And we would greatly appreciate that. And we welcome you if you are a new viewer, and we welcome you back if you are a longtime listener or viewer. So we're here. The time has arrived. The cup has been awarded. The 2024-25 season is done and dusted. It's in the books. And now it's time to look ahead. And we are less than a week away until the 2025 NHL Draft takes place. This year it is in Los Angeles at the Peacock Theater. Remember, this is the first year for the decentralized version of the draft. So most of the scouting teams and executives are going to be at their home arenas or home bases of operation with just, about the top 50 prospects or so will be gathering there in Los Angeles. And so as we get ready for that, fans of the Canadiens really they do a very good job at keeping the debate alive about whether or not Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes are going to use their first round picks to swing a deal, maybe, or if they're just going to go ahead and use them, pick them at 16 and 17 and add a bit more talent to their very good prospect pool. And so one of the people that we cannot get to the draft without speaking to first each and every year is Sportsnet's Sam Cosentino. He is one of the most knowledgeable draft experts there is in hockey. Sam appears regularly as an NHL analyst on Sportsnet and the NHL Network. He's going to be on both for next week's draft. And he was kind enough, as he always is, to take a little bit of time out of his very busy schedule this time of year to sit down with Rick and myself to reveal who he believes the Canadiens are likely to select in the first round of the draft. No season of draft coverage here on the Canadiens Connection podcast would be complete until we had a chance to welcome our next guest, Sam Cosentino, NHL analyst and Sportsnet draft expert, back to the show once again. The expert and official on all things NHL draft and NHL hockey. Sam, thanks so much for being here with us again. Very excited to have you back on the show.
Well, I love it. This is the annual, right?
It's
absolutely
this is the annual meeting virtually. No, really happy to be back, and exciting times in Montreal for sure with what happened this year and the prospects moving forward.
For sure, and pretty exciting time of year with the Stanley Cup just completed this week. Some say maybe the most intense, one of the most intense we've seen in many years. Before we get into the draft, what did we learn from the Stanley Cup final? This is, as I say, a copycat league, and teams will be trying to replicate this success. You have the Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cups, but three consecutive times to the final, and they're doing something right that the league has found hard to copy and hard to defend, I guess. So what does that change the focus for the draft? Is there more of a focus on compete, on character, on culture, those kinds of things?
Oh yeah, I think it has an impact for sure. When you look at the LA Kings and when they won in 12 and 14, everyone said you had to be big and heavy, right? And then we moved more to the skill side when Tampa was winning its back-to-back cups. And here we are now with Florida, kind of a combination of both things where they're big and they're heavy, but they play with a lot of skill too. So now we're seeing that combination become the hallmark of what makes a good team. So, I look at Florida and how they've gone about their business in terms of, well, we drafted our core guys, our Ekblads and our Barkovs. We got a goalie that we really liked and got him signed. And then we augmented with pieces from other teams that sort of fell out of favor. Reinhart, what a player he's become. The player that everyone expected to become when he was taken third overall all those years ago. Sam Bennett, same sort of thing. Calgary, all kinds of pressure. Guy can't do a pull-up, whatever else. Gets traded, opens up a new life for him. And then you look at the Brad Marchands of the world who sort of fell out of favor there in Boston. And it all comes together. So I think, there's a couple of things there. But I think when I look at their team, two things really stick out to me. They play bully hockey, and they have great chemistry in the group. And I think everything sort of falls under that widespread umbrella.
So in terms of this year's draft, everyone likes to kind of give that kind of overall classification of each year's draft class. And perhaps this year is not quite so elite prospect heavy, but what are your thoughts on just overall what kind of draft class this is? What kind of talent will teams be able to find in this kind of draft?
So it's interesting. Like, there's a couple of different things. We have a number of defensemen, but they're kind of spread out. So after Matthew Schaefer, is it going to be Radim Murtka out of Seattle? Is it going to be Jackson Smith out of Tri-City? Is it going to be Keyshawn Aitchison out of the Barrie Colts program? Then we have a lot of like average sized forwards. So Brady Martin, 6 foot, 178 pounds. Cole Reshney, Ben Kindle, Braden Coots, all like that 5'10" to 6 foot range, all like 175 to 180 pounds. Victor Eklund would be in that category. Well, he's put on some weight. I just looking at his most recent measurements for height and weight, I think he's up to 179 pounds now. So that's nice to see for a guy like Eklund. But like then I look at the draft class after that and I say, are we going to get those super high end guys? And Jason Buchel and I talk about this a lot. Well, surely some will emerge from the group, but we're not probably going to get that Bedard, or we're not probably going to get that Matthews or McDavid or McKinnon. But what we might get a little bit more of is some depth of players, kind of like a Lafreniere, right? Who's still kind of finding his way here, but a pretty good player and a top six guy, but not a top line guy. So you're looking at players, I think, in this draft class, Books and I kind of talking about it, are like players that are really going to fill needs. There's going to be PK guys and PP guys, but you're not going to see the guys that are dotting top lines everywhere or top defense pairings. You're probably looking at a lot of middling guys. And I think that's good because teams need those positions to fill out their roster and remain cap compliant.
So you mentioned Lafreniere. Just a bit of a follow-up there. Does that mean we're looking a little bit... Are there similarities between this draft and the 2020 draft?
Yeah, definitely. I do find some similarities there. And the reason is that we don't have that star person. We have someone we feel very confident is going to be at the top of the draft, but we don't have that superstar. That's a guarantee. And then I look down the list. If you go back to 2020, Tim Stützle has kind of emerged as the guy from that draft class, right? Mm-hmm. He seems to be the guy, but he's not a point per game guy yet in his career, although he's had a couple of really, really good seasons. So top line guy for sure, and someone's going to emerge from this draft class. But I'm looking at Marco Rossi and Cole Perfetti and Caden Gooley and guys like Jake Neighbors, Ridley Gregg, who all play very meaningful roles in their respective teams, but they're not the highlight guys. They're not the number one line type of guys. Yet they're really effective for their groups. Like Jake Neighbors is a perfect example of that, right? Mm-hmm. Here he's played now over 200 games for St. Louis. You look at him on the power play. He's a really good goal scorer. He plays with some heaviness to his game, but he's not a first line guy. He's very comfortable in that middle six, bouncing between the second and third lines. So Ridley Gregg, same sort of thing. He doesn't play on the top line for the Ottawa Senators, but he's a really good third line center. So that's the type of draft that I would classify as very similar to 2020.
So as far as classifying activity in the draft, it's been a little quiet in recent years, little to no movement. Canadians jumped up to take Hage a few spots last year. But this year, there seems to be a lot of noise going into the draft about teams willing to move up or down or out of the first round. Are the Canadians likely to be involved in that? Could it mean that they move up higher in the first round?
I could see that. I mean, picks 16 and 17, what does that value look like? How high could you get? I think where they're picking right now in those spots is probably, I have like a cutoff of about 12. Okay, so once we get beyond that, it seems to open up a little bit. And so obviously with Montreal and 2 picks in that area, they can, I think they can take some big swings there. Having said that, if you can get inside of 8, and those 2 picks should be able to generate that for you. And Seattle might be the perfect spot, right? Like they need to add to their prospect base. They could get 2 players at 16 and 17. Montreal would be happy because they would get into a spot where I think they're going to get one of the more elite players in this draft class. And then I look at Utah and I'm talking about, hey, found money. They bumped up 10 spots from 14 to 4 in the draft lottery. They have an owner who really wants to push things forward. They have plenty of prospects with, I think, 35 picks in the last 3 years. So that's a team that I could see moving. What it really comes down to most of the time when we're seeing movement is those multi-pick teams. Do they move one? Do they move both? How high can you move up if those multi-picks are somewhere later in the draft? And that's usually the case. So we'll see what happens here. I've been one who's always predicted there to be a lot of movement. It never really happens. I'm not jinxing it this time because I love when it happens on the draft floor, Rick and Amy. And so we'll see how it plays out. But I could definitely see Montreal being in that game. And part of that is like maybe moving live bodies too. They're pretty well stocked on defense. The emergence of Hudson has really changed the dynamic of how they feel about their group and their D group coming up. And he's pretty solidified now as one of the guys when I think there was a bit of uncertainty going into the year. We don't feel uncertain about that now. So I think live bodies and picks, Montreal Canadiens, they would definitely be in the mix to do something here.
I think we can absolutely agree with you when we say more trades. We're definitely all down for that for that first round. So let me follow that up with this question. This year being the first year that the draft has been decentralized, and you mentioned you literally said those trades that happen actively on the draft floor. Well, that might not with everyone kind of. We understand the top prospects are going to be together there in LA and some team representatives and so forth. But will the decentralized aspect of the draft this year, do you think that's going to have an effect on trades? Yes, they can pick up a phone. Yes, they can call one another, but that, walking by someone's table, tapping them on the elbow, pulling them aside for a few minutes to have a conversation, going back a couple of times. What are your thoughts on how this year's draft setup is going to affect the trade action?
I talked to one GM and he said to me that things are going to be pretty much preset. So we're going to have an idea of what the framework of a deal looks like before we get there, before we get to Friday. And so Fridays is just about hammering out the details, making sure both sides are comfortable with each of what is going to get in return, and then going from there. But I just don't believe that that's everybody. Stuff happens on the floor and your scouts are in your ear and they're telling you, hey, you know what, let's move off of this pick. Our list is starting to dwindle here. Or, hey, this is a guy we really like that we didn't think was going to be there. Let's try and move up to get him. It's going to be, I believe, more difficult because of that ability just to get up and to walk over to somebody.
That's right.
Or you pick up the phone at the table and no one knows who you're calling. I mean, we try and pick it up on TV all the time. And that sort of consummates something, and then okay, well just go meet me at the boards there and we'll figure the rest out. So, is it going to be done more stealthily because teams can be on the phone? Right, but you can only take kind of one phone call at a time. Whereas on the floor, you pick it up, hey, let me call Bob back, boom, boom, you dial that line. I just think it's going to be, the logistics of it are going to be a little bit more difficult. So definitely not a fan of the decentralized draft. I think those who voted for it have realized pretty quickly now that that's not going to be the case because it puts more of an onus to get to do things live and in person at the combine. And so, yeah, I think this will be a kind of one and done type of thing. But I actually think it's going to make things harder to get trades done because of not being able to walk over and see someone physically. The other part of that, Amy and Rick, is like everyone gets to the draft 4 or 5 days early, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's out having a drink. They're meeting with their teams. They're doing all sorts of stuff. And then when you get out and dinner and you see somebody, I think a lot of that conversation can happen kind of organically and informally in a bar setting, in a dinner setting, in a walking down the street setting, in a hotel lobby setting. That dynamic doesn't exist for this draft. And I think because of that is another reason why it's going to be more difficult to make trades.
So as far as the players available in the draft, Jeff Gorton has said one of the characteristics they're keying in on is players with high compete level. We talked about, you mentioned bully hockey by the Florida Panthers. Let's leave the Canadiens out of this for the minute. Irrespective of draft position, who are the players in this draft that play with an edge, players who have the potential to make an impact in a gritty playoff series?
So for me, it sort of starts at near the top of the list. Porter Martone is a right winger at Brampton. 37 goals. He proved as a late birthday now with a couple of years under his belt that he can score. But he can also play with some bump in his game. He can fight if you need him to do that, although we know that's diminished greatly. But man, he had a great year. It's 98 points this year, 35 plus goals for Martone. He would be one guy. Roger McQueen is another guy who has that element to his game. He missed most of the year with back issues, played just 17 games, but there was some currency on him in his draft minus 1 year. And so teams are pretty familiar with what they're getting. You'd have to be comfortable with the medical there. Keyshawn Aitchison is another guy who plays in Barrie. He'll hit everything that moves. He'll block shots. He'll play that old school in-your-face type of game and then yap to you about it afterwards and then stand up to the fight or the challenge of the fight that comes afterwards. Those, in my opinion, on the high end of the scale would be three guys that I'd be happy or I could envision playing in a type of series like we just saw between Edmonton and Florida.
So now the Canadiens, and if they hold on to their picks at 16, 17, let's talk about who might be a good fit for them. I'm looking back to an article that appeared on Sportsnet. This is from the 5th of May by Sam Cosentino. It says NHL top 16. Who will the Islanders take after the surprise? And if we scroll down, this is just the top 16. It says Montreal Canadiens, number 16, Jack Nesbitt. And you go on to say the Canadiens are looking to add size and talked about Kirby Dach in that. So we're not asking you to reveal. Your mock is going to come out next Wednesday, and we're all looking forward to that with anticipation. Not asking you to reveal your picks there, but who are some of the players that the Canadiens are going to be looking at with picks 16 and 17?
Yeah, I mean, listen, everyone has mocked Justin Carbonell being there, but he fits the bill, right? 6'1", 190 pounds. In fact, that's been updated a little bit too. I think he's a little bit bigger than that now. The Blainville-Boisbriand right winger scored 46 goals this year. He really shoots it well. His hands are amazing. So he has kind of that skill and heaviness to his game. So he's one guy that I think is definitely going to be in that neighborhood. Being a late birthday, he's a little older, so you'd think a little bit closer to being able to play for your NHL team, and sort of kind of fits or slots in perfectly to where Montreal is with a number of its prospects. Nesbitt, I do believe, is a guy that's going to be right in that neighborhood. He's had a lot of love lately and might end up just a bit higher than that. But he, too, is a guy at 6'4", 185 pounds, puts up 60 points, a point per game. He can win faceoffs. He can play in the penalty kill. Really good net front guy. Like, his hands are amazing, too, like in terms of tips and deflections, rebounds, that sort of thing. Nesbitt is really good in that area, and he brings a lot of different things to the table. And, again, not afraid to play a heavier physical game. I know one guy that Montreal has showed a lot of interest in is Lyndon Lakovic, who plays in Moose Jaw, where he does have that size at 6'4", 190 pounds, doesn't have that physical edge to his game. And that is what has concerned a lot of people. Now, is that something that you can teach? Is that something where the player is just used to growing up and getting used to being a bigger body player and then applying himself physically? Admittedly, Lyndon has said he wants to play a more physical brand, but is it in his DNA? I mean, 4 penalty minutes this year in 47 games. I think that's the lowest of anyone ranked in the top 40 or 50 in terms of NHL Central Scouting.
And
when it comes to North American skaters.
And part of that was one of the penalties, at least one of the penalties, was for playing with a broken stick. So
there you go, right?
And
now, unless he was going to use that broken stick for something.
Well, that's true. But he's the one, I guess he was pushed on the issue of compete level by the Canadiens. And he was quoted out of the combine saying the Montreal Canadiens were definitely his most difficult interview of the week.
Yeah, and I think a lot of players will say that, right? If not the most interesting, for sure. They press their players hard, and because it's a massive investment, and this is the one time where it's kind of all bets are off, and as a team, you have access to do that, and it might not necessarily be fair to 17 and 18-year-old kids, but by the same token, there's a large investment being put forth by these NHL clubs for these players, and they want to be absolutely sure that they are getting top quality grade character, and I can understand that, right? And so Lakovic, though, for his skating ability, his shooting ability, his hands, really, really, really good. He too, a lot like Carbonneau is a late birthday guy. They're late 06 birthdays, so again they've had that additional year to kind of find their way in junior hockey. But he's Lakovic's one of the most polarizing guys for me, because from a pure skill standpoint, he's probably a top 10 pick.
That's fascinating. That's really fascinating.
Just while we're here, and you mentioned Carbonneau, and there's going to be special attention always towards the Q guys. Caleb Denoyer going to be gone. We all expect, unless the Canadiens move up a lot. But I loved reading your notes from the Combine, and you had notes about both of the Q guys going in the first. Denoyer, you talked about him, and not necessarily emulating a member of the Montreal Canadiens when he was out playing road hockey, and Justin Carbonneau about his dropping to the second round of the Q draft. If you can just give those little highlights that you had in your Combine notes.
Yeah, I think, I'll start with Carbonneau first, and he's a guy who felt that he deserved to be a first round guy in the Q draft, and typically that's the path players are following: your first round in your respective junior draft, and that tends to lead to first round speculation when it comes time to get to the NHL draft. So for Carbonneau, I think that kind of set him aside, and that allowed him to come into the Quebec Junior League, Maritimes Junior League, with a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah. The
other part there is because he was still very highly thought of, even though he was a second round pick, he was a guy that I think Rouyn Noranda, who originally drafted, felt that they could trade, and you're not sort of going to get the same hyper fanfare because he's a second round pick. So ultimately, the thing that sort of ticked him off and forced him to play with a chip on his shoulder might have been the thing that got him the opportunity to play as much as he did when he moved to Blainville, which is kind of an interesting dynamic to all of that. When it comes to Denoyer, his brother Elliot's a fifth-round pick of Philadelphia going back a few years, and he and his brother were playing, pond hockey or road hockey, and of course, Elliot would always choose someone from the Montreal Canadiens, but with Denoyer being such a competitor, he's like, the heck with that. I'm not choosing another Montreal Canadien. I'm going to go right to the heart, and I'm going to be Milan Lucic from the Boston Bruins, or Milan, or Brad Marchand from the Boston Bruins. I thought, wow, you're a competitive little bugger even at that age. And if that's instilled in you at that young age, surely it's only going to grow with you as you get older. And I just found that a real interesting talking point when it came to Caleb.
Let me ask you, just on that subject of talking to players at the Combine, found it interesting that you had some recent comments of all the 30 players that you folks at Sportsnet interviewed. Seems that you were pretty impressed with the overall interview ability of this year's Combine class.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say to that is, oftentimes, let's say we get in there, we're doing 25 or 30 different interviews. you're going to find probably 1/3 of them that are very well rehearsed. Like the agent has sat the kid down in the morning at breakfast and said, hey, don't say this, say this, be polite. You know, if you're in with Montreal, make sure you tell them Montreal was your favorite team growing up. You know, like kind of stuff like that. And so that wasn't the case. The other part to that is like, how does one player identify himself or project himself? And oftentimes, well, I'm a first-line center, and I'm going to win a Stanley Cup, and I'm a top-pairing D, and I'll fight, and I'll score goals, and, you know, but you just don't know that. You just don't know that. And so, obviously, the kids want to show their confidence, but we had a lot of players come into the room and say, yeah, you know what, I think I fit perfectly into an NHL lineup as a third-line center.
Wow.
Or a second-line right winger, or a mid-pairing D. So that was really interesting, and I always think more highly of those who can self-identify as opposed to those who are just trying to wish themselves to be something they're not.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an exciting time of the year with the draft coming up, the potential of trades. We've seen some trades that's already underway. Chris Kreider moving, Mason Marchment, Eric Holla. And there's going to be some free agent signings, new contracts, lots to look forward to. A year ago, when you were on the Canadiens Connection, interestingly enough, we asked you what you're looking forward to, and you kind of forecast Patrick Laine and the Canadiens' interest in him, and you talked about the synergy between Kent and Marty and how whatever acquisition was made, that Marty could extract the most out of that player, and certainly power play wise, Marty was able to extract the most out of Patrick Laine. I guess my question is, what are you looking forward to most over the next 3 or 4 weeks? Whether it's potential trades, free agent frenzy, all of that sort of thing.
Well, I'm you know, to be perfectly honest, like I'm really honed in on Utah with the 4th pick. I feel strongly that pick is going to move. I really do. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to what happens with Mitch Marner. You know, Sam Bennett, I guess, maybe somewhat intoxicated or if you will, says he's going back to Florida. Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm really interested in Brad Marchand to see what happens with him. I think he's found a really comfortable spot. It will be just a matter of, you know, can they meet the dollars? Like, you have a guy who's on the back nine here. If he can go and cash out for 3 years and $20 million somewhere, where Florida might be offering him, you know, 2 years at $12 million, you probably think the guy goes for term. But it's really interesting. I'll be fascinated to see just how much he loved South Florida life and playing there on the team by what he does. So, you know, I guess Bennett, if it's still unofficial at this point, but he creates a lot of interest for me. But really, like, just kind of seeing if there's going to be hockey trades where live bodies are moving.
Yeah.
Like, that's what interests me. Oh, yeah, this and that for a pick. But I always like it when there's live bodies going both ways, and just to see whether it's a change of scenery, you know, whether it's a situation where someone's worn out his welcome, whatever the case might be. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of player movement happens in free agency with Utah in the draft with their 4th overall pick. Those are the things that interest me most right now.
Well, we are certainly looking forward to finding out the answers to all of those questions and seeing all of the drama unfold at the 2025 NHL Entry Draft. Sam, we appreciate it every year. This is 8 years running now.
Yes.
that you come back here on the Canadiens Connection to chat with us before the draft. Give us all of your insight and your analysis. Spot on, really great information once again. And good luck over the next couple of weeks. We will be watching. You'll see Sam draft coverage on Sportsnet, and there will be
and his mock
coming out on Wednesday. And we look forward to talking to you again really soon, Sam.
Well, Rick, thanks for reaching out. Amy, great to talk to you both. Really appreciate it, and let's hope we get a 9th year in.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will.
Wow, that was great. Listen, there's nobody better than Sam, especially for his knowledge of CHL prospects. You can ask him about a player that's well down the ranking sheets, and he knows. He's met the prospects. He's talked with them. He's gone to their house to visit with them, or their minor league rink. He really knows these prospects. And you think back to all those years ago when we sat with Sam in Plymouth, and got to know him many years ago. And
USA Hockey's rink in Plymouth, Michigan.
That's right. And then we'd run into him, and we ran into him in Buffalo and Montreal and elsewhere. And he was always big smile on his face, and we've kept in touch ever since. And this is the 8th consecutive year he's been on our show to provide draft coverage, and we really appreciate his time. Great to see him doing NHL games on the Sportsnet panel. But his bread and butter is prospects. Both he and Jason Bukala, who's also been on the show. None better, and very grateful for him taking time in a very busy week for him to join the pod.
And just a reminder, once again, as we mentioned there on the interview, be sure to keep an eye out on Sportsnet's website because Sam and Jason will both individually each have their own final mock draft out middle to the end of next week, right before the draft. So
Wednesday and Thursday, start looking for those on the website.
Absolutely. So we would be remiss if we did not wrap up this segment today with a new Canadiens Connection question of the week, and it's a two-parter. You can choose to answer either of these questions or both of them, but we really want to know prior to next week's draft, what would you be willing to give up for the Canadiens to move up into the 7 to 12 range in the first round? And if they did that, who would be your target? Who would you want them to move up into picks 7 to 12 to try to get? You can answer that. And in addition to that, you can also answer this. Which two players, so let's say that they don't move up. Let's say that they go ahead and they draft at 16 and 17. Who do you want the Habs to draft at those two positions and why? At 16 and 17, who would you want the Canadiens to draft and why? Or what are you willing to give up in order for them to move up into the 7 to 12 range? And who would you like them to acquire, or who would you like them to select if they did move up? Of course, send us a text on the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET. You can leave us a comment on YouTube. You can find us there at InsideTheCanadiens.com, or leave us a message on social media as well at Habs Connection. And we will be reading your best responses next week on the show. And we'll already have the answers to the draft by the time next week's show comes around. So get your answers in now. We'll see if any of you hit the nail right on the head. For now, we are going to take our last break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast for this week. And on the other side, we have got your best responses to last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. You don't want to miss that, so stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
The NBA Finals are finally here, and this is your last shot to win some real cash before the season ends. The simplest way to get in on the action? Downloading the Pick 6 app from DraftKings. It's crazy simple. Just pick more or less on the stats for two or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Nail your picks and you're heating up. Pick 6 brings upside with payouts up to 500 times. Ready to make your finals run? New DraftKings Pick 6 customers can toss in just $5 on your first entry, and you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code THPN. That's code THPN. New customers play $5, get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Ride the upside only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And welcome back to episode 353 of the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. Don't forget, follow us at Habs Connection on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Once again, a big thanks to Russ Cohen and Sam Cosentino for being here with us on the show this week. It's been a terrific show so far. We've heard from them, and now we want to hear from you. Don't forget about the Canadiens Connection question of the week. It's your choice of 2 or both. First off, what would you be willing to give up for the Habs to move up into picks 7 to 12 in the first round? And who would you want them to select if they did move up that far? Or if they choose to go ahead with their 16th and 17th overall picks, who would you want the Canadiens to draft there and why? Send us your answers on the Rocket Sports text line, 585-3ROCKET, or on social media or on our YouTube channel. We will pick the best answers and read them next week on the show. Also, be sure you've bookmarked our brand new home this season, this summer and coming season for our written content. That's over at hockeyhotstove.com. You heard, if you heard Michael Augello on the show last week, he is one of the founders of hockeyhotstove.com, a brand new integral place for NHL coverage from experienced credentialed journalists all over the league. We are happy to be part of that new crew, and we'll be providing the Montreal Canadiens coverage. And so you're going to want to be sure to check that out around the draft as well. So be sure you've got that bookmarked. The fastest way to even get there, you can go to hockeyhotstove.com and just click on the Canadiens logo. That'll take you to the Canadiens page and our coverage. Or you can just go straight to habshotstove.com, and that'll take you right to our page there. And jump into the forum as well. There's a fan forum, kind of a chat room kind of forum, back and forth conversations there. That's a lot of fun. Last week, your Canadiens Connection question of the week. What kind of player do you think the Canadiens are missing the most? And will that player be available at pick 16 in this year's draft? We had some good responses. And on YouTube, we had at GalcanFTW says, I'm thinking Coots and Carbonneau. So that would be, hold on, let me get first names here.
Justin Carbonneau
and Braden Coots is who he's talking about. He says, I'm thinking Coots and Carbonneau are my 2 picks for Montreal. If they can scoop someone like Martin in the second round, great. He's like a tougher, younger version of Gallagher who puts the heat on the defense.
Getting Martin in the second round.
No, you're not getting Martin in the second round, but one can hope. We need to start building a team with character role players and not just randomly saying, oh, this guy is good, that guy is okay. They need to fit a role. I don't know what to do with Newhook. He's like that guy who can skate with anyone in the league, but his IQ is just not there. In my opinion, I would make room for other players to grow. I would trade off Doc and Newhook. They were dumb trades. Get rid of Armia on waivers. I don't care. And a couple others. All right. Thank you. That's a good reply. Thank you for that.
It's just interesting to look at the Florida Panthers and the guys that they took, that were kind of maybe struggling elsewhere, and they took a chance on. And compare them to Doc and Newhook, and there's just no comparison. This one comes from a regular commenter, that is at CenterHigh7948. Always appreciate hearing from him, and I like throwing challenges his way. Center High says, great show. I think Kapanen is the main player. I believe is ready. We have about 4 or 5 close, but they need another year in Laval, but excited because they're close. So you never know. Mayu, Reinbacher, Xhekaj, Tuck, that's Florian Xhekaj. We'll see if they can shock us this year to get on the roster, but I think a minimum another year for the forwards, in my opinion. other than Kapanen. Go Habs, go. As far as the Habs getting great ratings for our younger players coming up, the top ranking, that was on McKeen's. That was one of the things that I threw back to him. He says, well, Rick, I know they're talented, but I stand by the fact that too many are small. I know they have talent, but they'll never see the lineup because we have too many small players. Habs are too small. They already need sizing up. These are prospects are talented. They sure are, but we just need to get much larger. I know they're talented. I'm not questioning that. I'm saying those who can translate to the NHL. We'll have to trade a lot of them in packages because they can play for 31 other teams as long as those clubs can insulate them. I think he thinks they're small.
I think so.
Montreal just happens to be a team loaded with these small guys, so there's no room for more. Again, Habs will be looking to size up if they have any sense. It's all going to be fun, Rick, so I appreciate your question on what I think of that group that ranked our prospects. McKeen's again. Thanks to McKeen's. I don't put tons of heat in their results due to the fact that they're not taking everything into factor as far as what the Habs need. Size. And we don't have enough of it. And that's why I say it's great to have a ton of highly touted prospects. And I agree, they do have that, but they are too small to fit on a team that's already too small. But yes, some of them will fit on other NHL organizations that have the size already. I love curveballs you send my way. I just have a great bat. Has a great bat and he has great confidence, and we always appreciate hearing him. You're so great, Rick, and so is Amy. Keep them coming. This is fun. It's fun for us too, and we always thank you for your detailed comments.
I think he thinks they're small.
Do you think?
I think so.
The funny thing is that if you actually do the math, like I think this, it goes back to Bergevin and the Smurfs and all of that.
They've gotten a little bigger.
And they have. And if you actually do the math and you look at size comparisons by teams, the Canadiens aren't all that small. If you look at the average weight in the team, in all 32 teams, the Canadiens are 8th in the league. If you look at height, Canadiens come out at 29th. However, Canadiens average at 6'1". There's the only range in the NHL between all 32 teams, this is amazing, is between 6'1" and 6'2". Otherwise, it's just fractions of an inch difference. So where the Canadiens really don't measure up is in terms of experience. You look at the Oilers are the most experienced team, 16,000 games combined experience. The Leafs, the Golden Knights, the New Jersey Devils, the Florida Panthers, the Winnipeg Jets, Carolina Hurricanes, Dallas Stars, Colorado Avalanche, all of those playoff teams and some that went quite far. It's experience that makes a difference. The Canadiens down at 29th with less than half of the experience, 7,000 games that the Oilers have. So I think size is kind of overblown. I understand. I would say that the Canadiens have to get bigger at specific positions, and defense is obviously one. And it's partially because, Hudson, you're not going to change that, and Hudson's not going anywhere.
No.
But then you have Matheson and Carrier, who they don't have the size. They don't play physical at all. You have Struble that doesn't play to his size consistently. So you're left with Goulet, you're left with Xhekaj, and that's not enough in the current NHL.
Logan Mailloux would fit the bill.
Well, he certainly would. Reinbacher has the size. Mailloux plays a little bit more physically.
Yes, he does.
At this point. Those players will help the Montreal Canadiens. But so I wouldn't agree in general that the Canadiens are too small. I would just say they need to target some of their picks to get that size, to get that physicality, and as Jeff Gordon says, compete. That's what you need on this roster.
If you would like your thoughts to be tossed into the hat for potential selection to be read on the show next week, don't forget to get in your answers to this week's 2 Canadiens Connection questions of the week. And then, gear up because the first round of the draft is Friday night. The remaining 6 rounds will take place on Saturday. So that means, yes, our Canadiens Connection podcast will be out on Saturday, June 28th, as it usually is. Always comes out on the following Monday on YouTube. However, just look for the podcast on Saturday to likely come out at a little bit of a later hour in the day because of the draft. We're going to wait till the full draft is done before we record the show and talk about the draft and things of that nature. So,
but it's our draft extravaganzas, so
That's
you're going to
right.
want to bookmark that show and
Yes.
and Canadians with 4 picks in the top 50. This is going to be a draft that hopefully will move the rebuild along even further.
That's right. We're going to break down everything that Hughes and Gordon do next weekend on our next show. So enjoy the draft. Enjoy the first weekend of official summer. And we'll see you next week to talk all about it. You have been listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.